Hey, welcome to the Mind Hacking Habits podcast. We're up to day 8 on our 45-day Mind Mastery 101 course for Mind Hacking Happiness. If you'd like indefinite access to this course, go to mindhackinghabits.com, sign up through that process, because if we have to start charging for it again in the future, it was $1,000 previously and now it's free. Then we may have to pull these recordings down here. But if you want indefinite access to where you can come back and watch it at any time, go to mindhackinghabits.com. Also, if you get a number of people to sign up for the course and mention that you sent them in the forums. So you sign up in the course and then you go to the forums, you just drop your name. Every 5 times somebody drops your name, you get a pull in the freebie $100 Amazon gift card giveaway. So get on that. I hope things are well for you guys. Here's day 8. Okay, welcome to day 8 of the 45-day Mind Mastery 101 course from Mind Hacking Happiness. I am your instructor, Sean Webb. Let's get right into today's topic. So yesterday we talked about how your mind creates this thing within you called the self. And the self is the thing that is associated with potential threats in the world, right? Because your brain is the organ of survival, and the limbic system scans for threats. But then another question must be asked, a threat to what exactly? And the answer to that question becomes your mind's self, your mind's definition of you, your mind's laundry list of things that must be defended so that you can continue into tomorrow. Right? And it starts with your body, but then it also includes all the other ideas and people and things around you and connections that you have that are associated with your life. And so all of these things that wind up on your self map are then things that need to be defended by the limbic system. So your limbic system scans all the world's events, scans all your perceptions, scans all the thoughts that enter your mind, scans everything that everyone says, scans all the stuff that happens around you for potential threats to anything on your self map. And the more complex your mind's self map is, the more stuff there is that can ruin your day, distract you, cause stress in your life, etc. As an example, we have an attachment to our body, right? There's an inherent map of our existence that says, hey, I am my body. It's the thing I see in the mirror. It's the thing that goes and lifts the sandwich to my mouth. We got to keep that thing going, or I'm not going to be able to survive from today into tomorrow. So when a bear walks out of the woods 50 feet in front of you, the self item in play that's at threat is your body, because the bear can come eat you. Rawr, right? And so you have an emotional reaction of fear associated with the bear, which poses a threat because your limbic system says, hey, that thing could be a threat to the thing on our self map called body, our physical existence. So let's get out of here. Example 2. You've heard through the grapevine that layoffs are coming at your work. Well, one of the things that shows up on your self map is your job, your career. It is the thing that helps you bring in money to provide food for yourself and your family. That is creating sustenance that helps you survive from one day to the next. And if you lose your job, your survival could come into risk at some point. So that's why you get nervous when you hear that layoffs are coming, because it's a potential threat to a self item on your mind's self map. And so that limbic system creates a negative emotional response associated with the perception that there may be some type of layoffs or a threat to your job coming. Example 3, you have a favorite sports team. Your sports team makes it onto your self map. It is a portion of your sense of self. You have the logos on your jerseys in your closet. You have the whatever it is on your coffee cup, right? Your favorite sports team wins or loses the big game. Well, your emotional response associated with the good or bad news connected with that sports team's outcome creates a positive or negative emotion associated with that self item. And so if there's a potential that the game's coming down to the buzzer, that's why you get that anxiety that, oh my God, they're going to win or they're going to lose the game. That's why that occurs, is because those things show up on your self map, and it's the same exact processing that your brain uses to analyze and react to the threat of a bear walking out of the woods 50 feet in front of you, as when the buzzer's about to go off and you're down by 1 and your favorite player has the ball, right? So it's the same exact processing, the same exact reaction that's going on in your brain, in your mind, because your sports team has made it onto your self map. Now, there are also associations of everything that appears on your self map. So, as a general association, you can say, well, when you think of an apple, you think of the color red, and when you think of red, you can think what things are red, and you might come up with apple because there is an association in your mind connected with those two things, right? For me personally, I have an association right now because it's report card time. My son is associated with his report card, and my son's report card, however, comes out in the next day or so, although I already know what it's going to show, is associated with my son. So how I see his report card is how I'm going to see my son for the next couple of days, and how I see or when I think of my son, I think of his report card because it's that time of year. And so there's an association connected with my son's report card to him and vice versa. I'll tell you a funny little story. He got all A's, by the way. He's really smart. We actually thought about skipping a grade earlier this year, but because of that, he got good marks for his math. He's in second grade doing fourth grade math, stuff like that, his social studies and his reading, etc. But he got a bad report on the fact that he is using the response to the teacher of, well, obviously, way too often in front of the other kids. So when she says something to him or explains something, he's like, well, obviously, and is saying so in front of the other kids so much that she wrote it on his report card that we need to take care of that. I thought that was kind of funny. So, and it makes me laugh because that's a funny thing associated with his report card, which is associated with him, which is associated with me, which brings it right back into my mind of there's an emotional reaction connected with a self item in my brain. Even though it's his report card, it goes boop, 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 right up into my head, right? Well, everything that we do has an association, right? Our politics have associations of the planks of the politics, of the economics, the taxes, the entitlement programs, the abortion issue, the healthcare, the candidates that are in play, the pundits of what they're saying online of this or that, regardless of who you listen to. There are associations connected with that self item that you have if you have any connection to politics at all. If you don't have a connection to politics, you usually don't care about anything associated with the politics, or if you do, you limit your association to politics with the individual planks of the association connected with them. But if you are connected with the politics, then anytime any of those issues come up, you know where you stand on certain issues associated with the politics that you have. And so when any one of those things comes up, then that taps that politics self item in your mind, and that's what creates the emotional response associated with anything that you have on your self map. A different way associations can work, right? So let's say you have a favorite sports team. Let's go back to that. You have a favorite sports team, you wind up loving the logo. You wind up having a favorite player. You may have never known who that player is on your favorite sports team unless they would have been signed by your sports team. So now you know who they are. Now you have feelings, positive and negative, associated with your mind's definition of self, connected with any time they do well or bad in a game, or anytime they show up in the news headlines associated with something that's non-sports related. You follow it. You notice it. It affects you. You have an emotional reaction because of it. And you can even have inverse associations to where you love the team, but maybe you despise the head coach. And so you have bad feelings when good news associated with that head coach just comes out because you don't like him, and you have great feelings when bad news about the head coach comes out. Or maybe that also fuels your anger to say, let's get rid of the guy, whatever it is, or the girl. Those types of things can happen as well, but they're associations. So you love the logo. When something happens with the change in the logo, an emotional response occurs, right? You have a favorite player. When something happens with your favorite player, an emotional response occurs because of the connection of yourself, because of the way that that player lands on your personal identity within your mind. That's how it works. It's very simple processing within your brain, but the self is not simple at all. And if you despise the head coach, when something happens with the head coach, an emotional response occurs, usually in an inverse fashion. And so each attachment of your self map has literally dozens of associations that you may or may not identify, and you may or may not understand when you're talking about your emotional reactions associated with whatever it is. Like if, let's say you went to Penn State and you got a PhD. Well, there are a lot of people a few years ago when the head football coach at Penn State was embroiled in a cover-up of child abuse and sexual abuse of students and children associated with the university. Well, that was a huge, ugly mess for anybody who went to Penn State, because that association of the coach and their actions, the assistant coach and their actions with the child molestation were associated with Penn State. And Penn State was associated with the sheepskins that a lot of people got for their degrees. And so they felt horrible for a little while, and they were embarrassed to be associated with Penn State for a little while. And that stigma still is attached to a lesser degree today, to where whenever somebody thinks of Penn State, oh, well, Joe Paterno, wow, what a sad story that he's such a great coach, and in the end turned out to be someone who either ignored or turned his head the other way or whatever it was, and that was an ugliness associated with that. Well, boom, that ugliness connected with Penn State now gets wrapped up with everything associated with Penn State. So associations of this nature are connected to all things connected with self. And so, for instance, if my son came home with a bad report card, that would be a negative perception that I would have about that report card. It would be a negative perception about my son not being able to do the things that were associated with him getting better grades, and I might be disappointed because of that, because of, we'll talk about the very specific definitions of how emotions work, and I'll give you a breakdown and you'll understand exactly why all your emotions work in future episodes. But because of that, that would be the catalyst for me being disappointed about the grades, is because it maps from his report card to him right into my sense of self, and boop, the brain processing connected with that report card, which is just as an association of something. Right, because there's me, and then my son's associated with me, his report card's associated with him, right? I might have an opinion about his teacher who wrote the grade for the report card, right? So that might be an association that evokes an emotional response going boop, 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 right into my brain, right? Understanding associations is very important for us to understand how our brain works and the emotional responses that we have, because again, the more stuff that shows up on our self map, the more complicated our life can be, or more complicated our mind's operations can be, and the more stuff there is to ruin our day, distract us, and cause stress in our life. If we can simplify that process, or at the very least, understand that process, even if we're not going to simplify things, even if we're not going to say, I'm not going to care about that anymore, I'm going to put politics on the side for a while and not follow it, not care about it or whatever, because it ruins my day too often. If we're not willing to do that, at least if we can understand the process of how our mind is creating the negative stuff associated with it, then we understand through the name attainment studies that we can turn it off almost immediately by understanding exactly why it is we're having the negative emotional reaction that we're having. Okay? And that's critical, because doing that over time creates a plastic effect on our brain to where our brain starts to do it more automatically, and that stuff doesn't ruin our day anymore. How cool is that? Pretty freaking awesome. Okay. So our associations of attachments are then attachments themselves to our self-map. Whether or not we realize it or not, whether or not we understand how complex or complicated that can become, the associations of our self items also become attachments by association. And understanding your mind's self, again, is critical, because half of our mind cycles are spent on self-related stuff. 100% of our mind's negative reactions are things related to self. And the better we understand the process, the easier it is to hack our brain into not creating those negative emotions for us, those negative reactions for us. Because if you remember, when the limbic system is firing, it turns off 10 to 20 IQ points on the spot. And we want our brain to be supercharged. We want to be in full control of our cognitive abilities. We want to be maximized on our creativity, on our focus, on our ability to do cool stuff with our brain, because that creates an awesome life for us, right? Right. Nod your head. Yes. Okay, so homework. I want you to go back and get your mind's worksheet out and work on it a little more and add some associations to the things that you have started to plot on your mind's self map. Start to think about those things. And if you need to use a separate sheet of paper, use a separate sheet of paper to list out the things. Take your mind's self attachments, right? Take your mind's self items and just write them down one by one and ask yourself, are there any associations connected with other stuff connected with this self item? Like, for instance, if you have your day job, right, and part of your day job is a connection with a function that you serve, or a report that you have to do regularly, or a project that you're working on. Well, that's an association. And that explains, when you have your job and then you have a project associated with your job, that explains all emotional reactions that could come from that project or that report or that whatever it is that's connected with your job, right? That association explains exactly how it can jump from way out here, something that's supposedly not you, to be boop, 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 and all of a sudden it's you, because all of your emotional reactions are associated with your self stuff. And your self stuff are all the things that you can identify that are associated with you, and then associated with that, and then associated with that, because there may be multiple levels of associations that occur, and they all wind up on your self map. That's important for you to understand, because the better you understand it, the better you're going to be able to take control of it in the future. Booyah. Love you guys. Hope things are well. See you tomorrow.